rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where you can see.
Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I have a little gift for you guys. I want to show you guys a couple tips on how I go about my liquid to powder ratio, and also I'll be using two brushes to do this technique so you guys can get a little view of what you guys should use or what can work for you. So pretty much I'm going in with this Legacy Kolinsky brush in a number 8, and this is 100% Kolinsky hair brush. I promise you, if you guys get a really good brush or you invest in a good brush, you will see the difference when it comes to application. So as you guys can see, this is a round brush or a flat brush, right? So, and it's kind of like, you guys can see, I don't know if you guys call this one oval or square or whatever, but this is a flat, wider brush, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pick up a pearl so you guys can get a look at what I'm doing. And I want you guys to look at this bead. This bead is perfectly capable of doing a perfect application. As you guys can see, the acrylic softly bounces back. Now, you guys have to keep in mind what type of acrylics you guys are using as well when it comes to liquid to powder ratio. Now, the acrylic that I'm using is a cover, and it also is a self-leveling kind of acrylic, okay, or sculpting acrylic. So keep that in mind. Now, if you guys can look at this bead, you see how it's dried around it. It has like little lumps. It's like a little bumpy. This is not a good bead to apply. So just so you guys can kind of get, the hang of that. So when you guys see that, you guys don't even try to apply it. Just let it go on the napkin and go ahead and pick up another pearl. So as you guys can see, this is what you want every time, a consistent, nice pearl. Now, I'm trying to go for a medium pearl, and as you guys see, I'm tipping this over just a little bit because this brush is wide, right? And this is when the brushes that I'm going to show you guys in this video come into comparison. And it's because when you're practicing liquid to powder ratio with a wide brush like this, it is a little bit more complicated. Now, it doesn't mean that this isn't a good brush. I want you guys to pay attention to what I'm explaining right now. It's going to make sense when you guys get to the middle of the video and I put in comparison this brush with another brush. Now, I'm picking up a small pearl. As you guys see, I picked it up with the tip of my brush, right? With one corner. Again, this doesn't mean that I'm doing it wrong. If you guys notice, the shape isn't right as perfect as we wanted to practice liquid to powder ratio. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another brush, and this one is Nuni Torres's medium size brush. His brushes do not come by numbers, they come by sizes. So this is a medium size, and I absolutely love both of these brushes. Now, I'm just going to let that, just want to clear that up now. So I love both of these brushes. I cannot work without neither of them. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys in comparison this type of brush to practice liquid to powder ratio. So as you guys can see, I'm getting a perfectly round size bead, right? And by the look of it, I know it's a medium size. So what I'm doing is I'm just placing that there, and you guys see how beautifully that acrylic bounced back. And that's what you want every time, okay? So I'm going to pick up a bigger bead. As you guys can see, I'm patting it a few more times because I want a larger bead. And then to me, that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and place that with my tip. I'm going to lift up my brush, clean my brush, and come back and just pat this into place. You see the difference on how you can pick up the beads with a brush that's more thin, right? This brush is a lot thinner in the tip. So I feel like this is just so much better to practice liquid to powder ratio. Once you get the feel of the liquid to powder ratio, this is a smaller bead so you guys can see. And I'm going to go ahead and dry that just a little bit on my napkin because I knew it was a little bit more to the wet side. So with a brush like this, my point is that you guys get a perfect round bead every time. So when you guys are practicing, that'll make you see and feel the brush. And it's way different than using a wider brush when you're going to go into application. Now, I'm going to switch the angle of the camera so you guys can get a better view of what I'm going to do now. Now, this is going to make sense once I'm done showing you guys how to apply these beads onto an actual nail. So that's why I'm changing the angles and I'm kind of going over everything so you guys can get a better understanding. So as you guys see, I went into my monomer. I'm going in at a 45 degree, and that's because I only want to pick up with the tip of the brush. Okay, so I bounced it about 3 times. I'm looking at it. Sometimes I have to bounce it 2, sometimes 4. It all depends on the way it looks, because I'm so used to already like my liquid to powder ratio. So I kind of know how to play around with it. As you guys can see, I was able to place the bead with the tip of my brush. I cleaned my brush. So never forget to clean your brush, and you clean your brush in one direction, okay? In the same direction. Never back and forth and side and up and down. Never like that. Just always in the same direction. You guys see I'm patting this out into place. Now, from the look of this bead, I already know that it is more on the drier side. So I can manage to move this bead around, but if you are a beginner, this will be a little bit harder for you to play around with. This is why this practice or this exercise is great for you guys as beginners, not to skip this part, because without controlling the liquid to powder ratio, you won't ever be able to do a set of nails at a faster speed, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead again, and I'm going to pick up my bead. And as you guys see, I bounced it 3 times, right? I grabbed my bead. Now take a look at the bead. Nice. It's not dried or anything. I'm going to go ahead and place this. I'm going to release this with the tip of my brush, clean my brush. You see how the bead actually bounced back on its own. And this is a perfect bead for application. This is what you want every time. You want to have a consistent bead every time you are placing your beads onto the nail. Now, another thing is you want to make sure that you're able to pick up a nice amount of acrylic. Don't be scared to pick up acrylic on your brush. I noticed that a lot of beginners like to pick up smaller beads because they think they can control it better. And it actually makes your nail lumpy because you're not getting a full clean application. So then you got to go through filing, and filing takes you so long. So again, I picked up a bigger bead, as you guys can see. I'm able to place that. Now this is a little bit runnier, but that's okay. You guys can go ahead and place that right into the circle. And as you guys can see, you can play around with this kind of this bead as well. So it all depends on what you can work with. If you're fast on your hands and you like to work with a bead that's more on the runnier side, you can go ahead and do that. Some people like it more dry. It all depends. So this is why we are going through this exercise of liquid to powder ratio, so you can get comfortable with what works for you, right? So I'm going to go ahead and place this medium bead. There you go. I've released it, as you guys can see. You see how it self-levels. So when I mean self-leveling type of acrylic, and this is just a little bit off of the topic, but I want you guys to understand that self-leveling acrylics or polymers, right? When you are using these type of acrylics, what happens is you don't need to drag them. When you start dragging this type of polymer, so pretty much what I want you guys to understand with this is that when you use self-leveling polymers, what happens when you guys use the dragging technique instead of placing it and putting it into place, as you guys can see, it's self-leveled right now. I'm cleaning my brush and pushing it back into place. When you guys use the dragging technique, you're just taking it out of where the monomer and the polymer are trying to set. Because sometimes when we don't understand the chemistry behind these products, what happens is when we are beginners, we try to use this bead and place it onto our nail, and it's just a mess. So if you want to avoid that, try practicing this first. Once you get the hang of how to place your beads and the chemistry, kind of how this polymer sets and works, then you can go ahead and place onto the nail. So as you guys can see, as these beads were setting, you can see the first one that I had placed. I'm going to show you guys right here. You see how it was more to the drier side, so you can actually see the prints of when I was trying to place it into the circle. And then if you guys look at the other ones, they're more like nice and soft. So you want to have that consistency every time. So when you're going to go and file, it's going to make sense, right? So let's go ahead and place a bead on the nail. And I'm going to show you guys, I'm using the brush that has, that's more thin on the tip. So as you guys can see, I placed this bead, right? And I'm going ahead and I'm just pushing this into place. Now, as you guys can see, this bead is already trying to self-level, and I'm going to go ahead and pat this down. Now, this kind of brush, this is what I want to prove to you guys when it comes to practicing liquid to powder ratio versus using this actual brush on a nail. Because a lot of times we'll practice on a practice sheet like I just showed you guys, right? And then when it comes to applying it onto the nail, you guys have trouble, right? And it could be because of the brush you guys are using as well. So as you guys can see, it is a little harder for me to use a thin brush for application. Now keep in mind, this is a small nail. Sometimes we work with longer nails on an actual client or on ourselves, right? So when you use a smaller brush, it is harder to practice on an actual nail. Now I'm just going to prove this point to you guys really quick. As you guys can see, it looks great. It looks great, but it has given me a little trouble. This is taking me quite a little bit of time as well. I'm going to go ahead with another bead. I'm going to submerge my brush completely. I'm going to go ahead and pick up my bead. Now, I don't want you guys to think that I'm comparing these brushes to tell you guys which one is better for application or not. That is not the case. Because honestly, I think if I had a size large in this brush, it would have worked perfectly for me. But since it is a medium brush, for me, it's just not what I'm used to working with, if that makes sense. So it is an excellent brush. I love this brush. Again, like I said before, in the beginning of the video, I cannot work without this brush and my other brush. So just so you guys know. But this brush I do not use for application. That's just kind of what I want to prove to you guys, right? And I just use it for detailing. Now, I did want to show you guys that this brush is better for application. So say you guys use a small size and it's easier for you to work with, or you have a client with small nails, this brush is excellent. You know, it's good to have different options when it comes to working, right? So I just wanted to prove this point to you guys, because a lot of times when it comes to practicing or being a beginner, we don't know what brush to work with, or, you know, to start with. So I can always tell my girls, hey, you know, use a size 8 brush or use a size 14 brush, but it might not work for you guys, and it's because of what I'm explaining in this video. So I hope you guys kind of get an understanding of what I wanted to prove in this video and how I go about the liquid to powder ratio. So, I mean, pretty much, I'm sure you guys already know the 3 methods of how to pick up the liquid and how to bounce it on the powder, because I'm pretty sure there's so many videos on that. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more information when it comes to using your brush correctly, or what type of brush you guys are using, because I get this question so many times. What brush should I use? Which one do you recommend? And I'm always like tied up into like, what should I answer? Because I mean, you can use multiple brushes. It depends what work are you going to do? What job are you going to do on your client? You know what I mean? So basically, if I'm going to do an encapsulated nail set, so I would definitely use the Nuni Torres brush, because for me, it's just great. It's awesome to detail. But when it comes to like a full application, I like to use a wider brush. And this is the point of me showing you guys this, and just kind of trying to get you guys a better understanding of what can help you improve your application techniques, right? So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and use the other brush now. I'm gonna switch brushes. Now make sure, again, you guys are always cleaning and wiping in one direction before putting your brush away. You do not want to mess up these great brushes, because I promise you, if you invest in a good brush, you will have a brush for a very long time. I promise you guys that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick up a bead. So I want you guys to pay attention to this application. As you guys can see, that's a perfect medium-sized bead. I'm gonna place that right into place. I'm gonna go ahead and push this to the center, because I don't want it to like start going towards the sides, right? It gets heavy towards the side, so I'm pushing it towards the middle, and I'm pulling it down and patting. I'm using patting motions, right? Now, because this bead is a little wet, you probably see me drag my brush just a little bit, right? I'm cleaning out my brush, and I'm just patting into place. Again, as you guys, if you're noticing and looking at the bead while I'm patting it into place, it marks the brush on it, right? But then it kind of bounces back and you don't see any marks at all. And this is what you want every time, a nice consistent bead that you guys can just pat into place and you don't have to struggle with your application. Just patting that into place, as you guys can see, and it's perfect. This is a perfect application for a nice natural nail. As you guys can see, it isn't too thick, it isn't too thin. I feel like this is absolutely perfect if you're going to do a natural application. So yeah, that's pretty much that. I'm going to go ahead in with another bead, and I want to show you guys when you drag your brush, you can actually see where you're dragging. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick up another bead, right? And then we're going to take this bead, we're going to place it right in the center, okay, right above. And I'm going to go ahead, clean my brush again, push the sides in because you don't want that to build on the sides. And as you guys see, I'm blending it, so I'm sweeping it down, right? I'm sweeping, sweeping, sweeping. But this pearl is still, it has enough monomer in it to bounce back. It isn't drying on me. So as you guys can see, as I'm brushing it now, you can see that it's already drying, and you can get more, you can see more of where I'm passing the brush, right? You can see where I'm dragging the brush because you can see the imprints in it. So you want to avoid doing this too many times to the point where it is just not leveled and it looks clumpy and it's just bumpy, because and then when you have to come back to file, it's going to be a lot of work to get that perfect nice and sleek look, right? So this is what you guys want to perfect. You want to work on this, you want to practice this, so you get that consistency. So pretty much that's it. I'm going to go ahead with another bead. Now I want you guys to pay attention to this bead. This is the last bead I'm going to place. As you guys see, I'm pushing it up. I place it and I'm pushing it up, right? That's when you want to push that bead so that it can adhere perfectly into the cuticle area, right? You won't have any lifting if you guys follow this. So once you guys place that perfect liquid to powder ratio bead on the cuticle area, it'll naturally it'll stick on to that area. You won't have any lifting at all. You want to make sure that you don't use a dry bead when it comes to this area, because if it's too dry, you're going to push it into place, it's going to start to lift. Now if it's too wet, it's going to run into your cuticle area. So if it's too wet, it's not good, and if it's too dry, it isn't good either. You want that perfect liquid to powder ratio so you're able to adhere that bead perfectly into that area and then just mold it. Now what helps me a lot, because when the bead is a little bit to the runnier side or it's a little bit more wet, what helps me a lot is holding it in this angle. As you guys can see, the tip of my nail is pointing to my table. So that means that it is impossible, right, for that bead to run into that cuticle area, if that makes sense. Now here I was just showing you guys how to clean up the sides and then the end. I don't like to cut the end of my tip, like the excess acrylic. I don't like to do that unless I just had too much on and then I just want to cut it, right? But pretty much you guys can see nothing goes to waste with this kind of polymer. That's why I love it. This is one of my favorites, actually. This is by Legacy, by the way. So there you have it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.